we are joined on the line by AAP journalist Joel Gould. Welcome you, sir, to the run home.
Oh, it's great to be here, guys. Yeah, what a day in rugby league and what a week in rugby league we've had.
Huge day in rugby league. Never a dull moment for the greatest game on this earth. We're going to get all the Queensland mail off you, Joel. The Broncos have gone back-to-back now for pre-season challenges. Didn't really work out for them last year off the back of winning it. But I think, and I'm hoping you're going to say the same thing, that this year they're probably in for a better one. What's the general update? A few injuries: Cobbo Staggs with the quad, Reece Walsh, a bit of a knee concern, and Payne Haas as well. How are those three looking going into season 2025?
Well, I spoke to the Broncos just this morning about those three guys. Look, even at the time, it didn't seem too serious, but what they're telling me is the Broncos have got 3 days off at the start of this week, and they go back to training on Thursday, and those three guys are all expected to train. There might be some load management with some of them. I mean, Cobbo Staggs has been doing a little bit of rehab running, I think on a calf and a hamstring, but this was a quad injury, a minor one, mind you. And they're telling me that they're all three are on track for round one. So there's nothing at the moment for Broncos fans to be too concerned about.
Yeah, that's good. And we saw Adam Reynolds, Ben Hunt side by side. Reynolds not doing the kicking though on the weekend. What's the general sort of update in terms of those boys partnering up?
Well, it's a really good question. Like Adam, I think he took the first kick at goal and Josh Rogers took over, but he didn't play that many minutes. So I wouldn't read too much into the fact that he didn't kick for goal. Other than that, might be the first one. But with those two, I was talking to David Middleton last week, and they'll be the two oldest halves in the NRL since Des Hasler and Cliff Lyons played together in 1996 in the final round. Can you believe?
Yes. Wow. Can one of them grow a little tash like Cliffy, maybe? We need to bring back that little sort of pencil tash.
Yeah, and also one of them should get on the bungers too, like straight up. The darts, just like a tribute to the great Cliffy.
Well, I mean, it's funny you should say that. We won't get into too much detail. Probably don't have time for you. But at ANZ
we do, Joel. We do have time.
Oh, you do have time. Well, in ANZ Stadium back in the day when Wayne used to coach the Broncos, there was actually a smoking room. Guys like Johnny Plath would go in there at halftime after Wayne had finished his speech, and Wayne would say, "That's it, guys. Time to roll." And they'd have to go back out, and some of those guys had told me about that. So how times have changed when it comes to that sort of thing.
I'd love to see a bit of retro camera from that, like that engagement room in there. Wouldn't you love to see him just Wayne roll it in there and a couple of blokes just stubbing their darts out on the with their boots just on the concrete going, righto, boys, let's get back into them. Here we go.
Well, that's how it was, you know, and it was a different era, wasn't it? And of course, there would have been, I can't imagine Wayne allowing any cameras in there, but to be a fly on the wall, and it would have been quite interesting. But back to your question, yes, they're oldies, but they're goodies, and I think Renault's still going to be monitored a bit through this coming fortnight. I don't think you'll see him. I think that they're not concerned about him, but he'll do a bit of load management as well. Ben Hunt looks like he's got a completely new lease of life on that left edge, didn't he? Just playing with freedom. He doesn't have to worry about running the team. It just looked amazing to me. It looked really good.
I'm going to put a hypothetical to you. What if they are 9-0 or 10-0 by the time Ezra Mam comes back? A little bit of a hypothetical, but if Benny Hunt is starring in that 6 jersey, what does Madge do? What does it actually look like?
Well, I think if you're winning and you've got a combination like those two guys, you wouldn't change it. I mean, I can't imagine if they're flying high on top of the table. Ezra Mam comes back. I'm not sure if he'd come back through Queensland Cup or not. But it would seem like madness to change something that's working. So if that happens, it's going to be a very interesting scenario for Madge. I can't imagine he'd change a winning combination because let's face it, if that's the combination he thinks can go through to the grand final, he wouldn't change it, I wouldn't think.
Would you think also, Jolie, that a lot will have to do with how the number 9 position plays out? So as Coal Miner just mentioned, if they're 9-0 or 10-0, then obviously Corey Pakes, who started yesterday, he'll be flying, I suppose, and then it'll be harder to make decisions. Do you see Corey Pakes as the starting 9?
Well, it looks very much like that, doesn't it? Like Madge's made a lot of changes positionally to this team, and Corey Pakes has done everything right. He was outstanding up on against the Titans in Toowoomba. He did the job the other day. I mean, you'd have to ask, why would he change that? And once again, good question you ask. If it was working, why would he change it? I mean, there has been talk of Hunt switching into 9 and Ezra Mam coming into 6, and that may well happen. But if Corey Pakes is doing the business, I can't imagine why a winning coach would change a team. It could only create rupture.
Mm. Let's change tack. Let's talk some Cowboys. They bounced back after a big loss in their first up match in the preseason. Probably the key takeout was the performances of Jackson Purdue, Tom Duffy as well. What does that backline look like for the Cowboys? Is it set in stone how they ran out, or how they were named at least on the weekend against the Cowboys? Scotty Drinkwater at fullback. He probably picks himself, but there's a lot of pieces that you could maybe move around. Is that how they line up in round one?
Well, I did speak to Todd Payten last week, and look, he basically said this about those guys you just mentioned. He said what he's liked about them is that he's given them an opportunity, and he said go out and basically own it. And I mean, Purdue has just owned everything. I know Payten is a huge fan of Purdue. I couldn't see him changing that. He's just gone so well. He's actually a halfback or a playmaker in an outside back's body at the moment. So he grew up playing in the halves. But Duffy, former Australian schoolboy, halfback of the year in the Q Cup last year.
Mm.
He's really laid down the gauntlet to Clifford, hasn't he? So, look, once again, like if it's working, Clifford only just recently come back to full training. On the surface, you'd think it's hard to imagine Clifford not getting the start, but Duffy's done everything right.
Mm.
So look, I think it's a big decision for Payten to have to make. But I'd be backing Duffy at this point. But the coach will make the final call on that one, I'd imagine. But I can't see why Purdue wouldn't be there, considering Zach Labart has had to come back from an ACL, and I'm not sure if he's going to be available in that round one anyway. So I reckon Purdue's a shoo-in.
Now, it was interesting to see John Bateman, super impressive, going up to North Queensland, obviously not one of the Tigers. And Cowboys have had a lot of injuries in the back row department. So they must be super stoked that, already that is coming along well.
Yeah, well, he's a straight shooter. He said basically that when Bateman turned up for the first couple of weeks, he kept his head down, his mouth shut, and just got the business done. And since he's adapted to Townsville, he's just taken a leadership role. The reason he got in, he said, what basically was he's got grit, he scraps, he's competitive, and he said we need that because last year the one weakness that Todd Payten identified, and he looked at the two grand final sides, is that under pressure when they're on the back foot, they somehow find a way to repel and bounce back and be resilient. And the Cowboys lacked a bit of that. And he thought that Bateman was the man to deliver it. And I think John's got a new lease of life up there too. He's fit and healthy. He's not battling some of those injuries he had at West. So, look, it could be like the renaissance of John Bateman for the Cowboys, and they need him because Helam Luki obviously is out for the season.
Let's go from Townsville to the Glitter Strip. Bad news out of the Gold Coast this afternoon. Kieran Foran confirmed to have that biceps tear, so it looks like 3 months on the sideline. I'm trying to put a little bit of a silver lining on this, Joel, that it might just make Des Hasler's thinking or choosing that team a little bit easier, because now he's only got 3 players to fit into 3 spots as opposed to 4 getting into 3. What can you tell us about the injury, but then how they're going to line up with no Foran?
Yeah, that's right. It's been confirmed that Kieran has that biceps tear, and he goes in for surgery on Wednesday. Look, the other night, I must say, he was that upbeat about his prospects of coming back and finishing this year on a high. Like he said, it's not going to break me. So that was good news from the Titans' point of view, I suppose, and shows what sort of a guy he is after what will be his 18th surgery on Wednesday.
Wow.
But Des was going to go with that combination of Brimson at 6 and Campbell at 7 and play Kieran off the bench. And that's the first time we actually saw it on the weekend. And of course, it didn't pan out the way he wanted. But I mean, the early signs were good, weren't they? They're both running halves. That can they manage a game? Well, Campbell's put a lot of work into his kicking, I believe, and Kieran will probably be mentoring him as well. So you're 100% right. It's going to make it a lot easier for the coach to make the call because Keanu Kinney is just one of the superstars of the game, isn't he? At fullback, and I think Verrills he was quite crafty against the Dolphins. He looked good. So and they got Randall as well that can play that 14 role that Kieran was going to play. So I think Des would be pretty happy with what he saw apart from Kieran's injury because if things didn't work out with Campbell and Brimson, you can always bring in the old warrior and he's going to do the job for you.
Yeah, on the other hand, we saw the Dolphins, they obviously went down. It's only a trial, but there was a lot of impressive things to come out of it. Tom Gilbert coming back, a real leader. How do you see his season playing out?
Well, let's hope it plays out the way that his 2023 season started, where he was just on fire and made Origin and made a big difference over there in Adelaide before he got injured. And then, of course, that shoulder injury factored into an ACL. And this will be, I think everyone will be holding their breath watching Tom Gilbert play and hoping he gets through this year because I think he's definitely going to be a 10-year Origin player for Queensland. So that's a huge thing for them. And like he had a lot of defending to do. There's some few Dolphins fans a bit worried. They saw him had an ice on his knee, but Tom said after it was just a precaution, just doing the professional thing. So, I mean, with Tom Flegler's, obviously, we don't know when he'll be back. So Gilbert is going to be huge for them at lock, and which is where he'll play.
Yeah, it almost becomes twice as important. That was going to be my next question. Like, for them to go, well, I think, just to play finals, but to go anywhere in the final series, they need Tommy Gilbert and Flegler, completely airborne. Is there any update in terms of a return for Flegler, or is it still a wait-and-see job?
It's a good question too, and it's still a wait-and-see job. But fans come and watch, and they see Tom Flegler training. He looks fine. He's running around. He's fit and healthy, apparently. But it's a bit of a mystery to me. I'm not quite sure. I don't think any journo really is about the whole story behind this nerve problem. But the Dolphins got on the front foot very early and said, and I think this was partly to protect Tom from any expectation that he'd be, roaring off into round one or anything like that. They said best case scenario, middle of the year. So I have spoken to the Dolphins about this and they said there's no change to that situation. But yeah, look, I know Wayne Bennett was absolutely devastated that he didn't have those two blokes playing for him last year because I think like Wayne's had a really good run with injuries in the past at the Broncos. Like a lot of his stars, even if they were injured, they were good for the final series, and obviously we know what he did there. But he didn't have that at the Dolphins. He had a lot of bad luck, and those two blokes and Jeremy Marshall King were three that stand out to me. So I think for the Dolphins to really go into top four category, they need Flegler.
Yeah, 100%. just on the Finns and trying to get any sort of team news out of them. I imagine it'd be like getting blood from a stone when Wayne Bennett was in town. What's Christian Wolf like to deal like in terms of that sort of interaction with the media? Obviously going to be different to Wayne because there's only one Wayne in this world. But how far away is he from him, Wayne, that sort of interaction?
Well, I just missed that last bit. There's a bit of a crackle, but I mean, it's funnily enough, Wayne, like the image I think some people have of Wayne is very different to the reality. Like, I mean, I've dealt with him for over 20 years, so I know him pretty well. I always found him to be really open about team selections. Like Wayne lets you watch training, for instance. Never shut down a training session. And like, he would tell you if someone's in or out. So getting team information off Wayne was never an issue, not for me anyway. I always found him to be extremely open and upfront. But look, I think Wolf is cut from the same cloth, to be honest. Everyone talks about the Bennett curse and all this sort of thing, and it's real because it's happened in the past. But Wolf's a bit different. I think he's won those titles in the Super League. He's transformed Tonga. He's a bit of a hard ass, Like you can just tell. Like he's a hard man. Like you look at him and he's just a hard bugger. But also he's from up Mount Isa way as well. So they breed him tough up there. So but he's also got that understated way with players, I think, that they respect. They know where they stand with him. So, look, as far as back to your question, team news, Look, he's a new coach, so maybe he wouldn't be as open as Wayne was about all that stuff. Because I think for Wayne, it was all water off a duck's back what we write in the paper, about the team.
Mm.
But but I think Christian will not be a victim of that so-called curse. That's my take on it. I guess time will tell. I don't think he'll be spooked. He'll be doing the spooking of people, I think, rather than being spooked. They tell me that he's a bit of a hard man.
I like
there's
that.
a bit in the background there. Yeah.
Mate, Jolie, I interviewed you about 6 weeks ago. I think it was prior to any of the Queensland teams trialling, and you are the guru of Queensland Rugby League. And I asked you, do all 4 teams make the 8? Do all 4 Queensland teams make the 8? And if not, who misses out? I think you said the Cowboys might be the team that struggles. Now that we've gone through the trials, are you changing your mind, or are you still settled on that?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys will be close to the top 8, but I don't think they'll make it. Okay. I'm sure they'd love to prove me wrong, but I just think, at the time I'd said to you that the recruitment of the Dolphins I liked, the transformation of the Broncos, the Titans with one of the best packs on paper, and some electrifying outside backs. Let's face it, if they can click, I just think the Cowboys for depth. What we saw on the weekend was really good, but what happens if there's injuries? What underneath it? I just would worry a little bit about how they're going to cope with that. And I think they've got one of the toughest assignments in rugby league with all the travel they do, losing all the players they do to Origin. They've got 4 or 5 superstars that always play Origin, and that's going to be tough for them. I think this year in particular, because they won't have some of those experienced blokes like the Felts, the Granvilles. Those sort of blokes to fall back on, which might test them in that period where you need to pick up points to make the 8.
Yep, we'll certainly be watching. Joel Gould, too generous with your time, as always. As Philpy said, it hit the nail on the head. You are the guru when it comes to Queensland Rugby League. Thank you for joining the Run Home with Joel and Fletch. We'll speak soon.
Yeah, great to be with you guys. Yeah, fantastic. See ya.
See you, mate.
You're still here? We'll see more on the Joel and Fletch socials and catch us live on SEN Radio. Because if you don't, you're an A grade. But if you do, you're the absolute Mickey.